Mr. President, this is Richard Peters, sovereign citizen of the United States of America. This is your daily citizens briefing, and today's date is Thursday, February the 5th, 2009. Pick up the phone and call me, Mr. President. My phone number is 1-877-365-0042. Mr. President, as I'm sure you're aware, on June the 4th, 1963, Executive Order 1110 was signed by President Kennedy, and as far as I can tell, it's still valid. That executive order from a former president of the United States gave the United States Treasury the authority to issue silver certificates against any silver bullion in possession by the United States. These new United States notes were issued as an interest-free and debt-free currency. Kennedy was killed, as we all tragically killed on November the 22nd, 1963, and the notes that he created were withdrawn from circulation. Now, it's my understanding, Mr. President, that the Federal Reserve can issue checks and then demand, pardon me, sir, and then demand that the Treasury Department Bureau of Printing and Engraving print them. Then the Federal Reserve loans the money back to the government, charging us interest. Then the government levies income tax on us, we the people of the United States, to pay tax on the interest on the debt. Now, it's my understanding, Mr. President, that the Federal Reserve is made up of 12 private credit monopolies, and that they practice what's known as fractional banking, a practice that began in the Middle Ages. What they do is create money from nothing, lend it to the government or the American middle class, and then they charge interest to boot. I've done some historical research on this, Mr. President. If you go back to the Middle Ages, pardon me, sir, to the goldsmith trades, the people that created jewelry and that sort of thing, or coined money. The goldsmiths rented out space in their vaults for merchants to store their gold or silver. Then they issued a certificate that showed the amount of gold stored, which was used as money to conduct business. Now, these goldsmiths noticed that the gold was rarely withdrawn, so they issued double receipts, fractional banking, creating money out of nothing and lending that fictional money out at interest. Some of the people that own these 12 private credit monopolies, known as Federal Reserve banks, and I haven't been able to trace down all of them. Some of them, their names are held secret. But they are the Rothschilds of London, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Israel Moses Self of Italy, Kuhn, Loeb, and Warburg of Germany, the Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, and of course the Rockefeller families, and then some others that are so secretive we probably will never know their names. It is also my understanding that the Fed is exempt from federal and state taxes, that they take in well over $1 trillion a year tax-free, and that every dime we, the people of the United States, pay in taxes is given to the Fed, the Federal Reserve, tax-free. If this is true, we've all been robbed, Mr. President. Now, let's say that you're approved to borrow $10,000 to do some home improvements on your home. You know that the bank didn't actually take $10,000 from its pile of cash and put it in your pile. What they did was simply go to their computers and input an entry of $10,000 into your account, Mr. President. They created from thin air a debt which you have to secure with an asset and repay with interest. The bank is allowed to create and lend as much debt as they want, as long as they do not exceed the 10-to-1 ratio the 10-to-1 ratio imposed by the Fed. It sort of puts a new slant on how you view your friendly banker, doesn't it? Now, the interesting thing that you need to understand, Mr. President, is Thomas Jefferson made a statement, and I want to read it to you. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currencies, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their prosperity until their children will wake up homeless on the continent that their fathers conquered. And that's exactly what's happening today. Mr. President, I would suggest that you go to Thomas Jefferson's grave and lay a wreath on there, and then make a national speech to announce a recreation of the American government. And because that's what we need, a peaceful, non-violent recreation of the American government. Now, Mr. President, I would suggest very strongly that that this whole stimulus package be directed only toward the creation of new jobs. You are rushing in. There's an old saying, Mr. President, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. We need to move very, very, very. We're at the Super Bowl, Mr. President, and you've been given a Hail Mary pass. And if you throw it the way Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid wants you to throw it, we're going to lose this game, Mr. President. And hundreds of millions of Americans are going to be lined up in bread lines. This is something I know that you don't want to happen. But let me tell you something that's very important that you understand. The condition, this is John Curran writing, the condition upon which God has given liberty to man is eternal vigilance, which condition, if he breaks, servitude is at once the consequence of his crime and the punishment of his guilt. I would suggest that with the establishment of the Federal Reserve, against the wishes of Thomas Jefferson, if he were alive at the time that bill was signed into law by Woodrow Wilson, he would have forbidden it. It's unconstitutional anyway. Congress alone has the power to coin the currency. Now you may say, well, it is coining the currency. No, it's giving the Federal Reserve decides to print checks, and the Federal Reserve tells the Treasury when to coin the currency, when and if. So we've lost control of our currency, Mr. President. It would be like every American going to his doctor would have every part of his body examined, but the blood, the doctor would say, belongs to the government of the United States, and I can't treat blood disease. Well, Mr. President, the American middle class is fixing very soon to become a corpse. And all you're doing is writing op-ed pieces, sir, saying how we need to hurry and rush here to get this stimulus bill passed, which is not a stimulus bill, but a government pork barrel bill. Now, there are things that you need to do to stimulate the economy, Mr. President. One would be to give up to a $30,000 cash voucher to every unemployed American so that they can go out within 90 days or less and get rehired at their old place of business or get a new job. Lining up 2 years from now to repair highways is not going to solve the problem, Mr. President. So the first thing you do is do the stimulus. The next thing you do is create a new United States currency, debt-free, put the Federal Reserve under the Department of the Treasury, reinstitute Kennedy's Executive Order 1110, and then go to the grave of Thomas Jefferson and lay a wreath and then give a speech about what Thomas Jefferson himself said. Let me repeat it to you. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issuance of their currencies, first by inflation and then by deflation, and that's what's happening by not only the Federal Reserve here in the United States, but by its ties to the other private banking cartels that are over there in Europe, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their prosperity until the children wake up homeless on the continents that their fathers conquered. End quote. I'm quoting Thomas Jefferson. Wouldn't you like to be in his class? Wouldn't you like to be in John Kennedy's class, Mr. President? Quit trying to foist this so-called stimulus bill on the American people. This so-called $15,000 tax credit, they need a $20,000 cash voucher to use right away to buy an energy-efficient home, Mr. President. The Republicans are just adding a little bit in here so they can go on and sign it, but I can assure you every Republican there hopes you fail so that they can come back in 4 years and take back the White House. Mr. President, you have an opportunity now that is absolutely unprecedented in the history of the world. God has placed you in that high and wonderful office, and you now have not only the support of the Democratic Party, which, believe me, you can do without, Mr. President. They're a bunch of hacks that are going back 30 or 40 years ago with old-time Keynesian economics. They just want to dig holes, refill them again, and they want to give people make-work projects. They want their pet government projects funded. It's not going to work. The shortest distance, Mr. President, between 2 points is the straight line, and that would be to give cash vouchers immediately. Now, Mr. President, I have many other ideas to share with you. Pick up the phone and call me, sir. My number is 1-877-365-0042. Pick up the phone and call me, Mr. President. This is Richard Peter here in Dallas, Texas. God bless you, sir, and your wonderful wife and family. And most importantly, God bless we the people of the United States of America. Please call me, Mr. President. It's absolutely urgent that you understand, if you don't already, what's going on in America today.